Okay? Ferguson argues that the strongest predictor of educational success or attainment is the mastery of a middle-class value system. It will trump anything else with regard to a grade. Right? So and she picks up the point, and ultimately we're going to read on it as well in another article, but she's also looking at the issue of acting white. Is learning acting white, mastering a white value system. That's essentially what she's saying, acting white. Right? So if you master this system, I'll give you an A. What does it have to do with intellectual enlightenment or intellectual aptitude? Right? I would argue that learning is acting white. That's exactly what it is. Look at the way we dress, look at the way we talk, look at the way we write. Whose system or value system are we really valuing at the end of the day? So, go for it, bro.
Now, I was just going to say, what do you mean by the way you talk, the way you dress, that's acting white, and you're learning? That's what she's saying, or that's what
she's saying? That's definitely what I'm saying, bro.
Oh, you do agree?
Absolutely. Emphatically so. Right? So that means if you come into this class, you write the right part, you say the right thing. She's definitely making that argument that the biggest predictor of educational mobility is the mastery of a white value system. She does not hide that point. This is a very, very, very popular book, read and referenced by a number of scholars here on different campuses. But let me just continue to make the point. Learning, for me, and for getting back to your point with regard to special ed students, people like my brother, they weren't interested in making or teaching my brother on how he could find himself, or how he could be more enlightened, or more emotionally and psychologically stable. The goal for El-Hajj and other brothers like El-Hajj was to train him, was to teach him, coach him, socialize him, to master a set of skills that will never teach him how to grow as a person. And from day one, unlike me, he rejected that. Right? I accepted it because I was taught it was the right thing to do and to be, until I got old enough and I realized that none of this stuff taught me about me neither. That's why I want to go get a PhD, bro. So I can now do it my way. I can think for me, learn for me. So I say this, and I definitely don't challenge your moms, or I don't challenge special ed teachers across the board, but they're, in my opinion, in my professional opinion, they're not interested in actually going inside those schools and training young men to be men. They're training to be slaves, brother. I mean, at the end of the day, what are they going to walk away with?
Well, I mean, how could you say that, though, if, you know, you don't get that foundation from home, you know? You it gotta start someplace.
I think a teacher who's hired for an institution like that should be prepared. When they go in, right? When I sit down and I train teachers on how to work with or engage black boys or other folk inside the school, that's what they need to be prepared for and trained. That should have been part of their curriculum in grad school or wherever they decide to get their training from. You don't come into this space, right, and act like what that child went through last night has nothing to do with the educational process today. Right? To me, that is a more violation. That is an ethical violation to have an authority, to have a so-called expert ignore that child didn't eat last night. Ignore that maybe he saw his mother get beat up by his father or some other man, and you act like that should not matter. That if you come inside my classroom and you are angry, something is wrong with you. And I hold the teacher accountable for that. How dare you treat them like that?
You can't really, I don't know. My opinion is, I don't know if you could really hold the teacher accountable for that, because, you know, when you're teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in an overpopulated public school, you know, I don't know. I just think that's a bad judgment, honestly. That's just from my opinion.
Let's get some other reactions in the room. Ms. Justin, we go around, we got to continue.
I agree with Drew. It's like, realistically, they're a teacher, and they can't guess what every kid goes through. I mean, there's white kids that go through a lot of stuff, too. You know, but it's like, you can't be there to always hold a kid's hand, and I think that's where it comes from family too.
I hear you, Ms. Justin. Ms. Bella.
I have a comment and a question. My comment is, I am a special ed teacher who has taught 4 years in the public school system with predominantly black men, and I think I agree with your statement that it is too easy to oversimplify. And my comment is, would you also argue that in black communities where schools are established, like free schools, not public schools instituted by the state, but a free school started by a particular religion, and or like, I mean, would you argue like schools in
Charter
Africa.
schools?
Yeah, any
Yeah.
type of school that is not, excuse me, publicly funded.
Yeah.
Would you argue that those are also teaching students to act white?
There's a big beef with the charter schools right now. I mean, as you may well know, since you're an educator. I think some charter schools, there are examples of them that are doing well, or that are good, that are trying to enlighten students. They typically take a radical stance to education. I would ultimately argue that charter schools, in my opinion, are exploiting and manipulating poor black people. Yeah, I would argue that. A lot of folks, for instance, like my friends who are just getting their degrees, right? This is what they do. Right? They link up with a funding source somewhere, generally a liberal source, funding source, and they say, give me a bunch of money so I can open up this school in this community right here. And oftentimes it becomes like an isolated set of kids from that community. People will come in and reap all kinds of profits. And it really isn't about educating children in the community. They're about achieving and accomplishing a set of goals and objectives. And once the objectives are accomplished, they move on. That's a pretty popular debate that's emerging right now. And so I think but there are examples of good charter schools that are out there. I think they're just few and far between. I think, and just to back up just a bit, I think schools and teachers, and I would argue, are in an impossible situation. But as an expert or as an authority figure, you come in and you say that. You structure your teaching style as a function of that. So I just had a conversation with a teacher the other day as well about the same topic. And we talked about the low power that they have when they enter this space. Your job is not to change all of this, because you don't have the opportunity or the power to do so. But you do have the power to acknowledge what's going on here. All right? You have the power to come here and with low power to say, you know what, it's unfair for me to be so angry with this child when I know what he's been through. Him and I both have been put in an impossible situation. Jesus, say that at least. Right? Instead of totally holding these children simply accountable for everything. That is not the answer. And I mean, this isn't Dr. Payne saying that's not the answer. I'm saying look at our schools today in 2008. Look at the dropout rate. Look at the suspension rates. Look at the expulsion rates. Right? I'm passionate about this stuff because this is what I write about and what I speak about. But take me out of the equation for a second. Look at what the result is of that philosophy. Look at how it's destroying the community. In terms of acting white, I agree, and then we do got to move on. I agree that learning is acting white in terms of a value system. We have to use somebody's value system, right? But my thing about it is that John Henry Clark, and I say this in a lot of my classes, he just passed, a very famous African historian. If you choose to access a white value system, such as I have, I've done that, then do it as a form of methodology, as opposed to completely becoming that. You know what I mean? So my goal, no doubt, I teach guys from the street, brother. You know what I mean? I teach guys it's in the Bloods, it's in the Crips. So if I can sit down with those brothers who I know have problems, who I know come from homes that are probably worse than those kids that are in special ed classes, and I can get them to hang in there with me year in and year out, and I can do it in a respectful and dignified way, I'm 33 years old. I know that 50-year-old teacher, whoever, if they really wanted to, they could respect those children much more than they do. When I work with these young men, I don't tell them to act black. I don't tell them not to dress a certain way. But I do talk to them about the utility of a white value system and why it's important to understand it and master it. So Ferguson is not arguing, don't master the white language, or don't master how to write, or don't master how to be professionally. But understand that's not necessarily your identity as a person, but that becomes a means and a way to survive in a larger and oppressive society.